Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would love to start with an icebreaker while we're waiting a few minutes for everyone to join. Let me know in the chat a song you've been playing on repeat lately. And again, we'll get started in just a few minutes. I know I need some new songs for my playlist, so I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. I'm going to drop mine in the chat as well. I'll kick us off, but I have the chat open, so I'm looking forward to what everyone is sharing with us today. In Texas, hold on.
I can't escape that one.
Love it. Feel free to add as well where you're tuning in from, if you're home or in the office or with city, state, country. We're so glad you're here, but I would love to know what is a song you've had on repeat. Ooh, Espresso, the Sabrina Carpenter song. I'm obsessed with that one lately. That's catchy. Awesome. Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Orlando. Welcome. Awesome. Bay Area.
Wow, all over.
Nothing Matters, The Last Dinner Party. I'm gonna have to check that out. It sounds fun. I don't think I've heard that one.
We're gonna make this a Spotify playlist, yeah.
I know we should. We should combine all these in a list. Virginia, Minneapolis, go Wolves. Yes. I've been watching the playoffs. That's been fun. Go Wolves. Glorious by Kate Hudson.
Mm.
Oh, and it's sunny in San Diego. That sounds amazing. It's actually sunny here today as well in Buffalo.
We are having a beautiful summer, yeah.
We are.
And it's not even summer yet.
It's just that it's always sunny in San Diego.
That's true. True. All right, we'll give it just another minute. If you haven't shared your song with us yet, let me know. Mine was Dance EDM. I wonder if I have any more EDM friends here in the chat. Awesome. Thanks, Bart. Welcome.
I have heard the heat's bad in Austin already. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, perfect. Let's get rolling. Feel free to still let us know your song or where you're tuning in from. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to today's webinar. So we're going to dive into how to drive better performance with effective one-on-ones. So as we know, a great manager can really double retention, and stronger employees means stronger results. So we're excited to dive into some best tips and tricks on this. So let's just share some preliminaries as we're getting started. So thank you again for joining us. My name is Claire Stroh. I'll be your host today. I'm the manager of Managed Talent Services at Lighthouse Technology Services, and I help small and mid-sized businesses with talent attraction, talent acquisition, and talent retention. And I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I share podcast episodes, helpful tips, resources, and events for the HR community. Before we get to today's presentation and introducing those speakers, we will be keeping the chat open for comments and discussion throughout the presentation. But if you have a particular question that you would like our speakers to answer, please use Zoom's Q&A function, including thumbs upping any questions you'd like to see answered. So if you're seeing other folks post questions in that Q&A function, you can give a thumbs up if you also, agree and have that question as well. Because after the presentation, our speakers will take about 15 minutes or so to get through as many of those questions in the Q&A box as possible. So definitely interact with us in chat. Again, throughout, we will have a discussion and questions in there as well. Just to make sure we don't miss your question, get that over to the Zoom Q&A function. And now a quick word about our organizers and sponsor. So this event has been organized by HR Chief and People. HR Chief is an HR-focused job board, resource center, and community dedicated to improving the HR and people ops industry. We strive to make work engaging, equitable, and impactful, and we empower people leaders to make a positive difference in their roles. So you can learn more at hrchief.com. And then People People gives HR people ops and recruiting pros a place to connect, ask questions, share best practices, and learn from one another. Started in 2016 and hosted by HR Chief, People People includes over 10,000 members from all over the world. And we would love for you to apply to join the community. It's just peoplepeople.group. So visit peoplepeople.group and we would love to see you with us in Slack. And this event today is sponsored by our friends at Bonusly. So thank you so much, Bonusly, for making this possible today. Bonusly is the #1 engagement solution that combines 360-degree recognition and rewards. So your employees love where they work, are engaged, and drive business results. All right, so let's dive into introducing our speakers before we get started. So Emily Martin is the founder of Ally HR Partners, and Ally HR Partners provides a strategic HR partnership to solve your people problems and maximize your people potential. Her tagline is "From stress to success," which I love. She's coached many managers over the years on giving effective one-on-ones. And then we'll also be learning a lot from Namaste Reed, Senior Engineering Manager at Bonusly. Namaste is a current people manager and has been for many years. He builds high-performing teams by aligning people and purpose, and he's leveraging one-on-ones as a key ceremony to help each team member manifest their leadership potential, leading to highly effective self-organizing teams. So let's dive in. Emily's going to kick us off. So over to you, Emily.
Thanks, Claire. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks for all joining us today. And yeah, one-on-ones, very, very valuable tools in your toolkit as managers and people leaders, whether you're doing them formally because you're instructed to by your HR leadership or your senior leadership, or just because you do them informally because you just know that these regular check-ins are a great management practice in building rapport and relationships with your team and your individual employees that report to you. So let's talk about what one-on-ones are. One-on-ones are regular check-ins, right? These are kind of, again, they could be formal or informal check-ins. Maybe best to formally build them into your weekly or biweekly or monthly schedules in terms of your management tasks to make sure that you're being very purposeful about having these relationship building and rapport building conversations. So they should be pretty frequently. There are opportunities for you to get feedback more than they are performance review type conversations. So you're checking in, getting feedback basically on what you can do and giving feedback on what the employee can do to get everybody from where you are to where you want to go when it comes to meeting performance expectations and what those are. Typically, they're meetings where both people own different parts of the agenda or different inputs into the agenda. So everybody should be coming to these meetings, first of all, on time, but also regularly with notes that have occurred since the last time on what's going on, feedback, things that you need, barriers in the way, and just, feedback to make sure that your relationship is working in terms of meeting each other's expectations, what those are and what the needs are. But absolutely a high bar for canceling these. And again, being purposeful about this and having purposeful built-in recurring conversations scheduled between you and those that you directly report to are super important for making sure that performance expectations are being communicated and met in terms of what the business needs and wants for everybody to be successful. And these really are tools to make sure everybody is successful in doing that in the business overall.
That's a good summary, Emily.
So,
oh, sorry.
Thanks.
I was just going to jump in and say, I think it's really important to remember that our relationships with our managers, that's the most important relationship we have at work. It dictates a lot of our growth, our satisfaction, the work we have an opportunity to do. It's essential. It's the essential relationship at work. So one-on-ones at a baseline are just that opportunity for managers and direct reports to connect and build that relationship, and ideally enjoy the time they spend working together as humans. Maybe you'd be friends outside of work, maybe not, but professionally, there's an opportunity to connect and care about each other and support each other's growth. So, yeah, I think one-on-ones as that key ceremony that helps us connect with other humans. We want to keep that front and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. And great segue into why they are important. Namaste. So thank you. So yeah, why are they important? Not only because they are, drivers behind, individual success, which obviously then bubbles up into team success, departmental success, and organizational success. The real reason why these are so important is because, like Namaste alluded to, they are the real key relationship builders between direct reports and their leadership. And if you guys have read anything about the contributors to employee satisfaction or productivity or even profitability in a business, a lot of it, in all cases, it's tied back to the satisfaction and engagement of employees within the business. And employee satisfaction and engagement is always directly tied to the relationship that they have with their direct manager. So again, any study will say, people do not leave organizations, they leave their bosses. And so the strength of your relationship and the trust of your relationship with your direct reports will directly impact the performance of those individuals, your team, and the organization. So that really is the big, huge why behind these one-on-one conversations being so significant and so important. Again, whether they're formal or informal, just having these regular, purposeful check-in times, build those relationships, build that trust, build that rapport, and then it allows for the rest of the working relationship to be much more successful. And yeah, annual reviews are not enough. Checking in with someone once a year on expectation setting and how those expectations are being met and different needs and wants and things to help them be more successful is certainly not effective and not frequent enough, and certainly not relationship building cadence of communication. So this is really a part of building a continuous feedback process, having regular check-ins so that, again, people understand what is expected, how they're doing against those expectations, and then what you can do better, and then letting them know what they can do better to meet those expectations. And that certainly needs to occur. And it's really fair and kind for that to occur more than, once a year or once every 6 months. But there's a lot of emotional relationship benefits to this, and also which tie into business benefits, but all benefits for the individual people that work in the business, but also the organization overall.
Thank you, Emily. So I think all of us like to thrive in our jobs and in our lives. And so as a manager, we have the opportunity to elevate the people that report to us. Or as a direct report, you can go to your manager and say, hey, I want to do better. I want to be the best version of myself that I can be at work. How can I get there? So one-on-ones are this opportunity for managers and direct reports to partner on maximizing performance, maximizing job satisfaction. It's really a wonderful opportunity. So as far as how to hold a successful one-on-one, you really want to start with like laying the groundwork of what you want to talk about in your one-on-ones. I think it's important to establish the relationship between a manager direct report. With my direct reports, I'll often have the conversation and say, hey, I am here to support your success. And that's a team effort. I need you to tell me what you need, and I'll tell you what I see, and we'll partner up, we'll collaborate on that. So that's the purpose of this meeting. I am here to support you, and this meeting is for your benefit. Determining the cadence is really important. Generally, you want to have like a weekly cadence is the best practice. Bi-weekly would be okay, but anything less than that, you're really missing out on these opportunities for continuous relationship building and also timely feedback and realignment. It's really helpful to have a shared agenda. So you know what you're going to talk about. That agenda can have contributions from both the manager and the direct report. And then as a manager, really as both people, but primarily as a manager, listen first. Like you're there to support, you're there to listen. It's not always necessary to solve somebody's problems. Sometimes they just need an ear, they need to be heard. And then if there is an ask for help, figure out how you can support them and do that. And then the last piece is building a team of leaders. So this is something I feel personally very strongly about. I want to be empowered at work to be my full self, bring everything I have to offer. And I think everybody else does too. So with each person on my team, what I'm looking for is what are opportunities I have to elevate them? What are opportunities I have to hand them something they can run with, or help them work through a problem where they have ownership of that solution. I didn't solve it for them. And so as we each manifest our leadership potential, then working in teams, we can become all the more effective.
Yeah, I
Yeah, and I
love.
think oh, sorry, Claire, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say namaste. I think you had a couple story examples maybe of times you and your one-on-ones kind of connected on different topics that you felt were really effective. I wasn't sure if there's anything you wanted to add.
Oh, sure. But did you want to go first, Emily?
Yeah, I was just going to mention 2 points to add to this, which is like you talked about manifesting your optimal and like true leadership potential. And I think these are a great way to do that. And I also remember reading, I think it was in the book How to Be a Great Boss, which is an awesome book if you're a people leader to read, and I would recommend. But it talked about how, a lot of leaders, especially if you're a person who individually doesn't need a lot of performance feedback in order to be motivated or feel engaged or like anyone cares, you may not realize that other people need that too, and you may not be as sensitive to other people's needs of that as well, so it may not come as naturally to you to provide feedback regularly. So had these one-on-ones are a great opportunity to schedule that time, and it doesn't make it less genuine for you to give the feedback if it's schedule time on your calendar every week to make sure that where that's occurring. It just helps you build a habit that you otherwise don't naturally maybe think to build, because that's not a need you have. And so I think, that would really help someone who optimize their leadership potential in that way. And then I would say also use this as an opportunity to be less reactive. I coach a lot of leaders who are now, we all use our phones for everything. And it's very easy to, in a moment when something happens or a thought pops into your mind, or you get feedback from a customer or someone else, quickly just want to get that out of your mind and react by sending a Slack message or a text message to employees about how they need to do this, or they didn't do that, or you're unhappy about this or that. It may be much more effective and way more constructive to take a note of that, for your next one-on-one coming up next week or however frequently you're having these, and to deliver these pieces of feedback and messages in a more constructive and less kind of chaotic and maybe like threatening and reactive way. So I think the one-on-ones can be a great tool to kind of rein in some of those bad habits as well, and the collateral damage that might result from them.
Yeah, all great points. So I think, as we're talking through, there's like a lot of stuff here. There's a lot that goes in, or there's a lot of opportunity around one-on-ones. And often they're just 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And you're not going to be able to touch on all of these points every single one-on-one. So one of the things I found is most effective is really just being available and meeting the other person where they're at. And we might only talk about one or two things. And it can vary a lot based on the person. So you mentioned, Emily, like some people might be self-motivated and have like great aspirations, and others might need some nudging or need some feedback to be their best self. So I have one engineer that I worked with who very passionate about like innovation and doing different cool projects. And sometimes when our one-on-ones, like I might have some ideas of agenda items that we talk about, but I usually just start with, hey, what's top of mind for you? What do you want to talk about? And sometimes he'd come and all he wants to do is share this really cool project that he worked on. He was looking at like organizational network analysis, and I could use data to understand how people collaborate more effectively. Really cool stuff. Wasn't part of his day job, but it was sort of maybe something that we could grow into a feature or a product that could benefit people. And if nothing else, it's a great learning opportunity. So in that one-on-one, I just listen and be curious and ask questions, and then maybe see if there's a way to introduce that in maybe like a hackathon or like a product meeting to see if it could make it onto the product roadmap. But ultimately, it's just great to see him like experimenting and learning. And another one-on-one more recently, I had an engineer who was affected by a natural disaster, some flooding, and really couldn't concentrate and think about work very much. We had some projects going on, and I wanted to check in on the status of them, but realized pretty quickly that there just wasn't any like headspace for that, and really just needed to be heard and supported. He was worried about his family, worried about his friends, and that was just top of mind. So that was okay. So that's what we talked about in that one-on-one, and I told him I cared and listened to what was going on and tried to figure out anything I could do to help and support him in that situation. So remembering that the first responsibility is to support the growth and success of your direct reports, that becomes the guiding light for a one-on-one, and all these other facets inform how you might do that effectively. But at the end of the day, it's meeting that person where they're at and making the meeting theirs.
Yeah, I love that, Namaste. I love how you create that safe space. And as a people manager, I would rather get more information and have to like harness that energy or kind of redirect it. Maybe like you said, maybe we'll turn that into a project later or whatever, than like not have them bring anything at all. So that kind of foundation and safe space, kind of like you mentioned, make sure that, they feel comfortable bringing all that out.
So the ideal one-on-one, I think as we're talking about, it's not going to look the same every week, but it's good to have these different categories, these different themes that we touch on over time, and that's because that's part of the whole experience of being a person at work, and we want to make sure we're supporting that whole person. So obviously, being prepared is really helpful. So a good practice is to fill in agenda items as they come up during the week. I think Emily, you mentioned like not just shooting people a message, but you could add it to an agenda to discuss in the one-on-one, and you could have that document running throughout the week. And as things come into your mind, just capture them, and maybe you talk about all of them, maybe you don't, but they're there as fodder for discussion. And then, be taking care of each other as humans. So something I really like to do is share like personal best and worst at work and in life, and then hear that from my direct reports as well. And that just, it creates a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of openness. And when we know what we're going through, maybe I've had some difficulties in my personal life, some illness or something happened and it's on my mind. I can share that. I can be open about it. And that's context for how I show up and perform at work. And the same thing for my direct reports. And so that's a lot of starting to build that safety and connection. And then, as I mentioned, if it's just a time to listen and support somebody, then it doesn't always have to be about work and career and so on. At the same time, it's really important that we use these opportunities to coach and help people grow and be their best selves. We all have blind spots, no matter how high performing we are, how good we are at our jobs. We only see and hear what we can experience with our specific perspective. And there's a lot of value in getting perspective from other people. It doesn't mean they're right. Feedback can always be, rejected or kind of filtered, but offering that perspective is a gift. And so as a manager, it's really important to offer that perspective on a regular basis so that your direct reports can learn, and maybe they can disagree and you can talk about it, or they can ask more questions, but they're never going to learn and grow if they don't get that feedback. And so as a manager, one of your core responsibilities is to provide that feedback on a regular basis. And these one-on-one meetings give a great space to do that. And then, yeah, it's really important to keep it going as a rhythm. So as I mentioned, weekly is the ideal cadence, but don't cancel it. If you have to move it a day or so, do that. But having that weekly touch point, that creates the space, kind of like you're talking about, Emily, to talk about those things that are important. If
Mhm.
you're holding off on those conversations and then canceling or rescheduling one-on-ones, those conversations might not happen, or they might happen after they would have been effective and helpful. So having that expectation that, oh yeah, I'm going to talk with my manager every week, it creates a sense of certainty and safety in an environment that sometimes feels very uncertain. Work can be very challenging at times. And then I think the last piece that's really important to key in is this really is for the direct report. So as managers and leaders, we kind of get used to talking a lot. Honestly, I get tired of the sound of my own voice. I like hearing other people talk. But that can become a habit. And so in one-on-ones, it's really important to just take the time to listen and just aim for a benchmark of the direct report talking at least half the time for the meeting.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll add about the continuous and the importance of keeping the meeting and not being late and showing up prepared is, whether conscious or unconscious, your team is taking cues from you about what is important and what is not. And so if you're not treating these one-on-ones in a way that is serious, or they perceive as being serious, they're not going to either. And they're just going to end up becoming kind of opportunities for you guys just to kind of like shoot the crap and, not make them productive, and even so casual that you end up missing them, or people show up late, or, think that they're kind of like optional and can reschedule or bump them for other meetings and things like that. So make sure you don't get into those bad habits, because otherwise, quickly the whole thing will erode and become pretty ineffective.
So I mentioned the opportunity for coaching for feedback. in one-on-ones. And this also ties into why that regular cadence is so important, because timely feedback is effective feedback. If I do something that's not working well and I don't hear about it for a month, the outcome of that has already happened, and my opportunity to course correct or learn is much diminished. I might incorporate it moving forward, but really the closest to the moment that something happens, that's when I can most understand the feedback and process and implement it. And so with our direct reports, we want to give that feedback in a timely manner. It doesn't always have to be right in the moment, but if we don't go more than a week, that's a good baseline. So that weekly one-on-one cadence really helps us stick to that. And then generally, it's not helpful to rehash like what's happened in the past. I think it's very good to be curious and understand why something happened, like what the mechanism was, and what the outcome or the impact of it was. But then, like, really, it's about coming up with a plan to do better in the future. And how can I support my direct report in being more successful in the future based on that feedback? And it just needs to be, and so that's like objective and fairness and balance is like, it's not about me giving you feedback or you giving me feedback because I need feedback too. It's a conversation. It's saying, hey, what are you seeing? How can I do a better job in my role? Here's something I see that maybe you could improve on. Let's talk about it. Does that make sense to you? What's your perspective? And it's that curiosity looking for that kernel of truth that we can both align on. That's how you know you're getting to something that's objective and fair and balanced. And then being really clear, like it's not just it's not some wishy-washy feeling or anything like that. It's like when this happened, this was the outcome, and this is an opportunity to do something different. And then the last one is just always remember, like, giving feedback is hard, receiving feedback is hard. It's really important to build up that relationship. And that takes time and practice. And the first few times it can be uncomfortable. And so sometimes it's good to just say, hey, I've got some feedback. Is it okay if I give it to you? And if the permission is given, you can give that feedback. But maybe just give them time to digest or ask if they want to talk about it or talk about it later. And just understand that it can be hard sometimes to receive and process feedback, but the goal is that we're moving forward together. And so giving space for the human element of that is really important.
Yeah, and you have clear on here, and it's next to empathy. And Brene Brown, I think says this, which is clear is kind. And I think one thing, one like nugget to take away as a leader, whether it's in these one-on-one conversations or formal performance reviews or just random feedback that you have to give throughout the workday as things occur. Yes, some people may have a hard time hearing feedback, especially if it's not completely positive feedback and constructive in some way. But and so we can kind of want to shy away from it or maybe beat around the bush in giving it. But the nicest thing you can do and the kindest thing you can do potentially is to be clear about what it is that someone is not doing right or could do better, because then you're giving them a true opportunity to improve, and that really is very kind, right? You're whether they kind of maybe acknowledge that in the moment or not, it shows that you care and you're really giving them an opportunity. So maybe just a different way to like reframe giving uncomfortable or constructive feedback, so it makes it easier in the future. All right. So as the HR person on the call, on the meeting, let's talk about compliance. So there is kind of secondary and tertiary and, additional benefits and reasons to do regular one-on-ones. And, one of those reasons is these are documented meetings in a way, and they are meetings where you are giving feedback. And so you may be able to, first of all, start creating a paper trail for any performance issues that exist, and if any action needs to be taken as a result of those later. But this is also an opportunity to do one of your most important jobs as well, as a frontline leader for the business, which is, ear to the ground, getting feedback, and really getting observations and first line data on what's going on, so that if there are any concerns at all, and even these could be legal concerns or just culture concerns, right, on things like bullying or harassment or discrimination or whatever it might be, you're going to kind of hear about these things, and more likely to hear them during these regular conversations where you've now built trust and employees feel comfortable sharing these things with you. So it's important to understand that then from there, you have a role as a manager and a leader with vicarious liability for your business to escalate those issues upward and start working with partners in HR or more senior leadership, whoever kind of wears that role in your organization to address those issues for, again, the good of the business from a liability standpoint, but also the benefit of anyone who may be suffering from that either illegal or just unacceptable conduct. So this can really help the business identify risk, and you identify risks again, not just from a legal standpoint, but from a cultural and morality standpoint in your business. And avoiding, it can help certainly avoid a toxic culture and just building, a sense of trust. And we've talked about things like psychological safety and accountability with empathy and things into your relationship with your staff certainly helps build that culture as well. So that, again, people become more comfortable with letting things be addressed and communicating things and issues before they rise to the level of a huge concern for you or the business overall.
All right, perfect. Thank you both. That's the content we had planned so far for today. So feel free to connect both with Emily and Namaste on LinkedIn. Also wanted to remind everybody that the SHRM PDC credit code will be emailed to you within 24 hours. So keep an eye out for that as well if you're looking for your SHRM recertification credits. Thank you again to Bonusly, our sponsor for today's webinar. And I want to share with you a little bit more about Bonusly because there's some serious perks and good opportunities to take advantage of a free trial and things like that. So again, Bonusly is the #1 engagement solution that combines 360-degree recognition and rewards so your employees love where they work, are engaged, and drive business results. So Bonusly helps you celebrate everyday contributions and key milestones, automate time-consuming HR processes, unlock people insights, and deliver meaningful digital rewards as well. So anyone can try Bonusly for free, but there's a special discount for People members. So you can get 2 months free when you sign up for an annual pro plan using code Community at checkout for 17% off, which equates to those 2 months of billing. So there's just many wonderful perks available for People members. So if you haven't joined us yet, be sure to head over to peoplepeople.group to join us in Slack. And also right now, I'm going to be launching a poll where you can indicate to us what type of follow-up you would like after this webinar. We want to make sure we are following up with you. So you should see it on the screen. I'm going to give everyone about 60 seconds, but we want to make sure you get the additional information that you need. So do you want to learn more about Bonusly, People, and our Slack community from Emily at Ally HR Partners? And all of the above is great too. So let us know. We'll make sure to get some follow-up information out to you. All right, and now's a good time as well. If you still have a question you would like to submit in Zoom's Q&A feature, get those in because we'll be heading over there next. And again, we will, this has been recorded, so we will be sending out a recording as well when we send you those follow-up materials, including that SHRM Research credit code. All right. Looks like we got a lot of votes in. Thank you. So I'm going to end that poll. Let's head over to our Q&A. So thank you all again so much for being here with us. Let's get into it. I'm going to start working through some of these questions here, get through as many as we can. Again, feel free to continue to send them in as well. I think this one was directed for Emily. You mentioned the name of a book. Do you have the name and author again you can share? Was that The Best Boss, perhaps?
How to Be a Great Boss. Yeah, it's part of the EOS book series.
EOS.
I think that one
Okay.
is, I think it's Gino Wickman. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Oh, good. We had a couple.
The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni is another amazing book, and his stuff is all really good on employee engagement and management. So yeah, I would check that one out too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I love this one. Is there a recommended agenda or form that either of you use for these discussions? So we talked about kind of establishing that shared agenda. Any advice there?
Yeah, I think there's, you can Google, we could drop some links in the chat. I think there's a number of like recommended forums, but um in my experience, it's good to have some structure, but not too much. So it can be nice to have like some async updates that you fill in ahead of time, or the direct report fills in about how they're feeling about work, how they're feeling about life, and those sorts of things. Maybe some priorities that they have going into the meeting, so you can realign on those priorities, give any updates or feedback on those. And then anything you might be struggling with that you want help on, those could all be good things to fill in ahead of time. And then during the
Mhm.
one-on-one meeting, it's good to just have that connection moment and say, hey, how are you? What's going on in your life? Don't just say it as a passing thing, but actually listen and care. Take a moment, and then talk through what's going on with work, what projects you have going on, what challenges you might be having, and so just making time to touch on these different topics. And then I think the last thing I forgot to mention is it's really good to come away from a one-on-one with a aligned set of takeaways or agenda
Mhm.
items. So if there's something that we identify in a one-on-one that I need to do to better support my direct report, or they want to take on like a new learning opportunity, or do try something different in their work, it's really good to write that down and then you can follow up on that in the next meeting.
Yeah, I think action items are really good, and differentiating between who owns each action item and making sure that's super clear is a very important takeaway. But yeah, I would echo everything you said. Just honestly, it could be as simple as here's some feedback, like this 1 minute or 2 minutes is time for me to give feedback, then followed by 2 minutes for you to give feedback. And then let's talk about, any issues or barriers that you have to getting things done, and how we can talk about additional meetings that are needed to work through them, or setting meetings with other people, and then action items coming out of it. That's a super simple agenda, but you can Google and find, I'm sure, many people's versions that they like. I'm sure they'll be similar to that.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, we got what are your favorite questions to ask to get people to open up? Maybe get the conversation started. So anything else on that?
You could ask about, I work with a client in every weekly meeting that we have. We share a personal win and a professional win for the week prior. So, it covers both bases, work and personal life. And then that can lead to other conversations too.
I usually just start with what's top of mind for you. Like it's open-ended and puts the ball in their court to say, this is what's sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's professional, and just opening the door. Maybe the first one or two one-on-ones, that's not as like effective to drill in and understand where there's opportunity for conversation. But once that routine is established, then yeah, usually that leads to very productive conversations.
Awesome. I agree. I like that. What's top of mind? I know I've had this issue too, so I like this question. How do you suggest helping to motivate teams to implement one-on-ones consistently? I know from HR perspective, I've had managers before, you probably have too, Emily, that's been like, people should know, what they're doing, or there's a lot of assumptions going on as to why we don't need to meet more often. So how would you motivate teams to implement one-on-ones more consistently?
I mean, hopefully you can do it with a carrot versus a stick, but managing behavior and performance is always a combo of those two things. I would say it probably needs, like all things, to start at the top. So your executive leadership, whatever that looks like in your organization, regardless of how big or small, should probably be doing these with their direct reports on a regular basis, and that sets the president for the rest of the organization. And makes everyone more accountable in that way. But accountability is one of my favorite words as an HR person. As cool or lame as that is. And I think you just need to, make sure that your leaders and your managers know that accountability is their number one accountability, and engagement and relationships with their staff is all a part of that. And so, if they're not doing these regular check-ins, then they're really not effectively meeting that performance expectation of their role. So, if you're a people leader with people leaders as direct reports, certainly like your one-on-ones would include checking in with them about how those are going with their team, and just building them into those kind of check-in and feedback conversations too. So yeah, building it into the fabric of job expectations, which then bubble up into one-on-one conversations and formal performance review conversations and all of that stuff.
On CJ's question, I think was specifically calling out like not feeling like there's time for it if you're already
Mm,
completely occupied, and I can relate. It's I think at the end of the day, it goes back to some of what you were saying, Emily, in terms of these are how we secure better outcomes for people and for the organization. So maybe it requires a mental shift that says, this is the highest priority thing as a
yeah.
manager that I can do. This is my job. First and foremost, my job is to take care of the people that report to me. And the way I do that primarily is through meeting with them one-on-one. And then that becomes the thing that's non-negotiable. And if that's being done effectively, the belief, the assumption is the performance, the engagement, the output of the team is going to go up. So it's a
Mhm.
win-win scenario. And it can feel sometimes when we have too much work to do that there isn't time to talk and time to communicate. But over and over again, I've seen that when there's a lot of stress or just people are overloaded, that's the most important time to communicate. And taking that moment to connect and decompress is actually going to lead to better work outputs than just powering through.
Mhm. Yeah, and we didn't talk about this either, but I think they shouldn't last a long time. I mean, especially if you're having them on a weekly basis or frequently, these don't need to be hour-long meetings that you schedule each, week or each time. I think maybe like max 30 minutes would be a good amount to set aside, and then maybe you don't even need that full 30 minutes each time. But these aren't like meetings to like solve problems. They're meetings to identify problems and then potentially take action from there to set up other meetings to solve them later. So these don't need to be super long meetings every week with everyone that reports to you.
Yeah, just get started. Do 15 minutes every other week. Like find a way to get the rhythm going and see if it can build.
Yeah, thank you, CJ. Added a little extra context in the chat for us as well. That his manager is giving him more responsibility. So it's hard for him to make them a priority when his managers to make the one-on-ones a priority. So I think you both kind of touched on it, but the more time you spend with your team, then actually like it frees up more time for you to do work and less like management duties. So
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely a mindset shift.
Well, maybe that's feedback you can share in your next one-on-one with your manager, CJ.
Say the same thing.
Hopefully you have the trust and things to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I love this one too. So unfortunately, many managers do wait until that biannual or annual performance review to give feedback. I'm curious if you found any solutions for talking about competencies and skills during one-on-ones or other calls. So I know you've both mentioned, like I have some feedback to share with you and have kind of just gone into it that way if it was kind of performance based. Anything else you can kind of elaborate on for that?
In the ideal case, we talked a little bit about how each one-on-one may not look the same, and some of that's just based on what's going on with somebody's life. But it can also be very helpful to have a more intentional realignment or checkpoint on a less frequent basis. So maybe monthly, like, hey, let's realign on your performance, make sure we're on the same page, make that the one-on-one agenda topic. Or quarterly, like, how is your career going? Where do you want to go with your career? Those conversations don't need to happen every week, but it's important that they happen more frequently than annually or biannually. So I'd recommend make that an agenda topic and make that fixed. Put it on a schedule so that there is a marked out time to have that reconnection above and beyond the continuous feedback that ideally is being given on a weekly and daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, one-on-ones are kind of a part of the whole infrastructure of performance management, which may also then include quarterly reviews that roll up into annual reviews. And maybe those quarterly reviews are the more frequent time besides biannually or annually that you kind of take a step back and address overall performance against, the job description or the accountabilities that are identified or the projects that they were assigned for the year or the quarter.
Yeah, and I know Ben and HR Chief did a great performance review webinar a couple months ago. And a lot of managers, I know I don't like doing annual performance reviews either, but if I meet with my team more often, it actually makes that process way easier. So I like to kind
Yes.
of pitch it that way a little bit too to my managers. Like if you wait to give this feedback, it's going to be much harder and much more uncomfortable to deliver. They're not going to take it as well. So to kind of what both you said about making it timely, it will make that year-end kind of process and infrastructure easier, like you said, Emily.
And you
Yeah,
can
you've
make,
already done the work.
Yeah.
oh, right. I was just going to say, plugging bonusly a little bit, but whatever a good solution for you looks like, you can make these more positive experiences too. So it's not always like, hey, I think you're a 5 and I think I'm a 9, and like, oh my God, we're so far apart, right? It's not always that. It can be like, hey, what are examples of things you're doing that are great? Let's write those down. Let's remember those. And so that can lead into a performance review where there's a lot of alignment. It's not a lot of work, and you really are identifying where somebody's excelled and making sure that that's well represented in their scene. So these conversations aren't always uh, how's your performance? This is what I'm rating you, but like what are the things you're doing that are exemplary, that demonstrate great competence and great outcomes for your company and in your role, and let's make note of those. Let's celebrate those on a regular basis, and then those can build up to more of these performance review conversations.
All right. We're at our last question, and we do still have a few more minutes. So if anyone wants to put something else in the Zoom Q&A feature in the chat, please feel free. How would either of you handle a situation where the CEO of a 25-person startup, who's an individual with a mild form of autism spectrum disorder, has limited empathy and views managing performance as babysitting?
It's a very specific question.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what seat this person's in who is asking, this question, if they're in a a position to provide guidance to the CEO or, in a parallel position. But um my advice to that CEO would be that, also kind of like EOS stuff, right person, right seat kind of conversations. I mean, at this point, he may be very good head of HR. Okay, yeah, well then HR should be advising him on these things. So if I was that HR person and I felt comfortable doing so and my job was secure, my feedback would be, I don't think this is something that you're really great at. And so, it's something that you need to delegate outward. If you're maybe you need a COO or something beneath your CEO, and your CEO focuses on vision and strategy, and your COO is the person that people in the business report to, and they're someone who has more of those people skills and leadership skills to effectively do that. Or potentially they could be coached up, you never know, by HR or an outside, coach of some sort that you guys secure.
May not be effective in this scenario, but sometimes it can be helpful just to ask the question, like, if not this, then what? Like, what would be like take them along on the journey of how to maximize performance. And maybe there are some things where there is common ground. It may not be exactly what you have in mind for performance management or what traditionally is included in that. But if you can have the conversation together and build alignment on, yeah, we want people to perform at a high level because that's good for the business. And here's one or two things we can do to make that better. That can be a start of
Yeah.
going journey together.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's similar. I've heard this before too, which is alongside. Okay, I'm just reading the notes here. It sounds like I've been in the situation where they kind of think like I should just be able to hire people for a job and expect them to be able to do it. But that isn't how people work, and management is a constant, never-ending job where you're constantly setting and resetting and checking in and verifying, trusting and verifying. So I think helping him understand that. And it's work worth doing if that's what gets everyone to the result that you want to get to.
Yeah. Super helpful. Thank you both. All right, those are all the questions that we had. So thank you again so much for joining us. I got to make sure to connect with everybody here on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. Again, within 24 hours, we'll get that follow-up email out to you with that SHRM credits. You'll get the recording and follow-up as well based on the poll that you indicated. So we'll make sure to follow up with you. And we look forward to seeing you on a future HR Chief webinar soon. So have a great rest of your week. Thank you again for joining us.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.